Hey, everybody, this is Chase, and welcome back to the Wellness Center podcast. I am super excited to be here today. Guys, this episode is going to be phenomenal. The skills and the tools that you're going to learn from this guest today are going to change your life for the better in everything that you do. So please make sure to listen to the very end. Again, this guy is going to give you a great story. He's going to give you amazing tools. It's going to be incredible. So make sure to tune in for the whole thing. Make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast as we're starting this new segment in the Wellness Center podcast. We're going to focus all about mental health and resiliency. So if you're someone who struggles with mental health, if you're someone who's just getting into the realm of mental health, understand that this podcast is for you. And if you know anyone, make sure to share the podcast with them as well. Because again, everything we do here is for your betterment. We want to change your lives for the better and destigmatize mental health. So my guest today, if I had to write down an entire list of everything that he's accomplished, and I'm sure I haven't even hit half of it, to be honest with you. But so he has 15 years as a licensed marriage and family therapist, and it might be more than that now, but that's what I remember. He has certifications in CBT, DBT, EMDR, ART, EFT, MBCT, experiential therapy, and he also has an expertise in family and marital therapy with an emphasis in sexual and addiction recovery. He has 3 podcasts that he currently hosts: the Therapy Bros podcast, the Wandering Therapist sessions, the Wholehearted podcast. He's spoken publicly multiple times, and probably the most important calling of all is he's a son of God, he's a husband, and he's a father. So without further ado, the man, the myth, and the legend, Tyler Patrick. How are you doing today, Tyler?
I'm doing better now that you've introduced me, Chase. I'm going to have you do that every morning. Why don't you just record that and then I'll just play it while I look at myself in the mirror every morning.
You know what? So for those who don't know, me and Tyler are friends. I've known him for years. He's helped me in a lot of my own recovery work. But a couple of weeks ago, he showed a skit from the Knight's Tale movie about amazing introductions, and I felt I had to do at least something even in the realm of that introduction for Tyler. So I'd be happy to
Dude,
send you
you
the
could be
recording.
like, for those of people who have seen the movie, like Geoffrey Chaucer's the one that introduces Ulrich von Liechtenstein, right? Like, dude, you could be my Geoffrey Chaucer every day of the week.
Dude, I would be happy to show up to Love Strong and just hype you up before you get going.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. How's your day going today?
Great, man. Happy to be here with you.
That's good, dude. And I am so grateful that you're here, man. I'm really excited for the conversation today. Um, and I'm just really excited to learn a little bit more about you, hear a little bit more about your story, and learn some of the skills and tools that you use on your daily basis and in your life that I know are going to bless other people, especially if they listen in. So let's just get right to those questions.
Great.
So Tyler, I want you to take us back to a really young Tyler Patrick. What are some of the first times that you started noticing or you started facing challenges regarding your mental health?
This, I always felt a lot of pressure growing up. I was the oldest son of 5 kids, raised in a pretty like standard, highly religious home,
Mm-hmm.
really good upbringing. But being the oldest, I felt a lot of pressure to perform. I thought a lot of pressure to be a good example. And I wanted to make everybody around me proud of me. And that pressure was always there, but I never really knew it because it was just the life that I was living. And
Mm-hmm.
I started to notice probably when I was a sophomore in high school, I had a pretty significant event happen in my life where I was with a group of friends and we had all these things that we would do on the weekends, like everybody does. And one of the things that we had done is we had actually been able to hoist a couch up on the roof of our school, our high school, and we would go up there on the weekends and hang out and do stuff.
Okay.
And with that particular night, all of my friends said, "Hey, let's go up on the couch tonight. Let's go do that." And I kind of had this pit in my stomach. I don't really want to do it. Doesn't feel right to me. We shouldn't go. But I didn't say anything because I was the youngest one of my group of friends and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to be left out. And then on the way down, we had to climb down this kind of in this part of the roof, and then you'd kind of slide down a pillar. One of my best friends ended up slipping and falling, and he fell and of course landed weird, and
Mm-hmm.
all of my other friends, because of the fear, ran away, and I was left to do first aid on him by myself
Wow.
until the paramedics showed up.
What happened to him?
And he fell, and when he landed, he had smacked his head on the concrete, and
Oh no.
so he was still alive and breathing when I was doing the first aid on him, trying to see. He was unconscious though, and then
Yeah.
I had to walk up to his parents' house and tell his parents. This is back in the day when nobody had a cell phone.
Oh, you
So
had to deliver the news in
so
person.
so so I went up to his
Oh,
parents' place and knocked on their door and said, "Hey,
yeah.
I'm supposed to tell you that your son's at this hospital." And then I ran home. It happened to be my dad's 40th birthday that night, and so I was a scared teenage kid, didn't know what was going on, but I didn't want to bother my dad's birthday party. So I went down in my room and said this prayer like I've never said a prayer before.
Mhm.
And I actually had a significant spiritual experience where I felt like the love of God come into my life and say, Tyler, everything's going to be okay. And I slept like a baby. And then I woke up the next morning and a phone rang and my friend died. And
My gosh.
and so as a teenage boy, there was this weird mix of emotion that came through. Like I felt like I'd had this spiritual experience where God was telling me everything was okay. My friend is now dead. I felt responsible in part because that's what teenage boys do. They see the world from them being the center of the universe, and I must have done something wrong. And
Yeah.
that kind of kicked off the spiral that I went down for the next couple of years of pure depression.
Okay.
I
What did that spiral look like?
it uh it 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 was a kind of thing where on the outside I still put on the front that I always had. You know, I still
Yeah.
overperformed. I was I actually really excelled at the things that I did because that's how I tried to find my value. And so I'm the captain of two sports teams, played three varsity sports as all the way through high school. I'm a member of the seminary council in my church group. I'm, getting these awards, Hope of America awards and
Yeah.
Kiwanis Kids Awards. So on the outside, it all
You're
looked like
excelling. Yeah.
I'm like the man. Like
You're the poster boy of awesome.
I'm the all-American boy, and
Hmm.
on the inside, there was a cancer emotionally that was growing within me where I just could not shake this feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I'm unlovable. And there was a darkness inside of me that I couldn't shake. And in order to cope with that, because I had to perform on the outside, I actually turned to things like pornography, where I could do it on my own in the secret of my own house. I could still keep up my pretenses, but that was my way. That was my medicine for coping with all
Yeah.
of the responsibility that I was carrying, the depression that I was feeling. And yet that just made me feel worse about myself in the long run. And from the time I was a sophomore up until about my senior year in high school, it just kind of spiraled down until being my senior year in high school, I got so depressed that I could barely get home from school before I would just collapse on the couch and then listen to depressing music and pretty much want to die.
Hmm.
And it kind of came to a head kind of towards the end of my senior year in high school where I had finally surmised a plan to end my own life. And I was going to sneak out at night, walk up to the park where I lived. We're right next to the overpass of the highway. And I was going to jump off the overpass in front of a truck as it passed by. I don't know
Wow.
why that's the plan, but that was the plan.
That's, it in those
Mm.
moments, the plans
Yeah.
don't make sense
Yeah.
looking back on it, but in the moment, that's all you can think about.
Yeah. And I honestly thought that I would be doing my everyone around me and the world a favor because I felt like such a burden to everything and everybody on the inside, even though nobody else saw it that way.
Yeah.
And I finally got up, went up there. It was like 2 a.m. I was standing there gripping the guardrail. I can still feel the chalkiness and the coldness of the guardrail in my hands.
So you acted on this plan.
I was there and I was waiting for a semi to come by. It was 2 a.m, luckily, because no semis came by for like 5 minutes. It was like empty highway.
Yeah.
And and then I feel like a miracle happened, even though it came in a really weird way. A guy pulled up behind me on the street and rolled down his window and asked me to get in the car and have sex with him. And
Oh. Okay.
so it's something about that, like, just kind of it hit me so sideways. It just shattered my whole perception. I just looked at myself and I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I'm sure that totally took you out of
So
whatever reality
yeah,
you were
so
in.
so I went home. I snuck back into my house, went to bed, and the next day my emotions finally kind of spilled over, and I picked a big fight with my younger brother Brandon, And then my mom was like, something is wrong with this kid. Like, he's not himself. We got to get him some help. And so she dragged me
Yeah.
in to the doctor. She got me some therapy. And I started to actually kind of get some tools and do better for a while,
Hey, good.
even though I never really addressed the pornography yet. I kept that a secret. And so my depression lifted a little bit because of the other help I was getting, but I still had this underbelly, this secret that I was carrying, and I carried it with me for another several years until it finally
Hmm.
broke loose after I'd been married with my wife, and she found out, and then everything broke loose. And that's when I really came to my senses and said, I've got to figure myself out. Like,
Yeah.
I can't keep hurting people the way that I've been hurting them. I I've got to figure out how to manage my mental and emotional health. I've got to overcome my addictions. I've got to learn how to be an honest man. And fortunately for me, it all came about at about the same time I was working for the drug courts of Southeast Idaho. So I was learning all about recovery stuff. So I just kind of started to apply the things that I was learning and teaching to my
Hmm.
own life. And since that, it's sort of started to form into what's now become kind of my life purpose and calling.
That's amazing, Tyler. And oh, wow, I am like, I am so in here with you based off of that. I didn't know any of that about you. So the fact that you were willing to come on here and share that with me and the people that are going to listen to this podcast, like, dude, that's huge. That is so vulnerable. That is so raw. Thank you for being willing to step into that bravery and share that. That's a lot. And oh my gosh, I'd love to pick that story apart just a little bit more if that's okay before we move
Go
on to the
ahead.
next question. So you're there. So I want to take you back to the rooftop in the school, and you're there applying first aid to your friend. The paramedics show. I'm assuming you called the paramedics.
Somebody else, one of my friends who ran away called the paramedics when they got to a
Okay,
phone. Hmm.
gotcha. And so the paramedics show up. They start applying first aid to this kid. You debrief them on everything you do. Do they tell you you're the one that needs to go tell the parents?
Yeah, they said, "Do you know where he lives? Like, we got to get this kid to the hospital. Can you make sure his parents know where we're taking him?"
Gotcha. Oh
Mhm.
man. And like in that moment, what was your thought?
You know how trauma works in the brain. It
Right.
was like everything kind of turned into snapshots and pictures in slow motion,
Yeah.
and I think I was in a lot of shock, and I just kind of went through the motions of what I was told to do. I remember walking up to the house, telling them, and
Yeah.
then walking to my house, and it was just kind of like watching it all on a movie again.
Yeah.
You know, I don't remember all the feelings other than I felt a ton of fear.
Yeah. Understandably,
Yeah.
that's very reasonable too. And another question I want to ask, and this is a deep one. So you say it's your dad's 40th birthday. You walk in and you don't want to bother him with probably one of the most traumatic experiences that you've ever experienced in your entire life to this point. Why?
Oh, I think that that boils down to all of the other things that had led up to that moment.
Hmm.
And it wasn't anything that anybody had particularly done to me. It was the way that I had interpreted the world that I was in. I was
Hmm.
the oldest son.
Hmm.
I wanted to make people proud of me. I
Hmm.
wanted to like not cause conflict. I already had these beliefs that maybe I already wasn't good enough and I was a burden to people. And so all of that kind of culminated in the same autopilot response of I don't want to burden anybody. I want my
Gotcha.
dad to enjoy his birthday.
Hmm.
I, what am I supposed to do? Walk into like this party and be like, "Hey everybody, I'm going to kill this party because this
Boom.
just
Yeah.
happened."
Yeah.
And so as a teenage kid, my parents, if I would have done that, my parents would have been all over like, "Wow, Tyler, let's figure out what's going on." They would have been totally supportive.
Hmm.
It was an internal story that I had already adopted in my life that I didn't want to make waves or be a burden to other people. The only way that people would love me is if I performed well, and I didn't want to risk their rejection because I wasn't performing well and I didn't want to be a
Yeah.
burden to them.
That makes sense. And speaking to, and that brings up another question for me. When did you start to develop that false core belief, that negative story that you didn't want to be a burden to anyone? Do you remember how young you were?
You know, I don't know the day that like that thought formulated in my mind, but I know the feeling,
Hmm.
that pressure, that need to perform,
Hmm.
that wow, I actually receive a lot of attention and love and support and connection, and I don't feel like I'm going to get rejected if I'm perfect. That that was early. Like as a young child. I don't think it was early enough for a young child to understand that the belief was forming. It was early
Right.
enough for a young child to feel that this is the way the world works for you.
Hmm.
And that's why this is so insidious, is because that false belief about myself was forming in a very innocent and natural way. And I think that happens for all of us as people
Absolutely.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where mental health starts to stem from, right? Those things that start from the time before we're even seven, I can imagine.
Yep.
That's crazy. So Tyler, thank you for sharing that story, man. That was that was cool.
You bet,
That
Chase.
was really cool. And so that kind of, and what you got up to the point where you were working in the court systems and you were a therapist and you had all of these resiliency tools and skills, and where everything kind of came to a head with your wife and with the pornography addiction and everything, these unhealthy coping mechanisms actually leads perfectly into my next question. And the next question has to do with the hero's journey. And for those who are listening who are unaware of what the hero's journey is, Tyler is the one who actually taught me about this. So I know he's all over this. The hero's journey is where you basically have to go into a really dark cave of your life and you have to wrestle with some of the deepest, hardest, insane things to come out the other side better than who you were going in, right? If you think about the movie Gladiator, if you've seen it, right? Like the Gladius has to go through an insanely terrible life for a while to avenge his family and make himself right, right? Hercules, for example, has to go and do all of these trainings and fight all these things and become this person and learn this humility and the selflessness through these trials and tribulations. And that's the hero's journey. So Tyler, my question for you is, you get to that point with your wife, you learn all these skills in the courts, and you think, I have to find my heart. I have to become the hero. I have to go through this cave. I have to step into this dark cave. Um, I want to know what happened then, right? What, as you stepped into that cave, what were some of the things you had to deal with, some of the things you had to learn, some of the false beliefs you had to challenge almost on a daily basis, and what impact has that had on your mental health journey?
That's a great question. I want to just maybe, before I answer that question, I want to say that I'm going to give an answer that's going to be a couple of minutes long. And it's going to sound like I went into the darkness and it came out all good and I'm better now. And I just want to clarify that the answer I'm going to give is going to be more of a synopsis of the last 15 years rather than, oh, I went into the cave and I came out great. So for
Right.
everyone who struggles with mental health issues, it's important to understand that I see this more as a process and as a necessary part of life and as an ongoing wrestle and continuation of growth rather than, oh, we go through the hero's journey once and then we're all better. So with that said, what I realized is that this recovery journey that I've been on for myself and a quest to cultivate the right heart, to become the person that I was designed to be the kind of father and husband that I wanted to be all the time, but I didn't quite live the principles to be that. Um, it took it took my life getting blown up in order to come to my senses enough to say, I've got to get out of this autopilot I've been living on forever. And and that then opened the door to, I remember these things pretty vividly, little shifts that started to happen over time. So in recovery work, you start to learn it's extremely important that you take care of yourself, your physical body, your emotional health, your relationships, you wrestle with a higher power. You have to take care of yourself in order to cultivate a heart that is fertile enough ground to receive the changes that you're trying to make. So daily different kinds of things that I added in. My current daily routine includes things like meditation, exercise, cold water immersion therapy. I actually even use some red light therapy. I do red light twice a week right now. With just and all of that stuff helps to kind of reinforce that I'm a person who's valuable and worth taking care of. And so I was started to learn to do those things. And then those things start to lead you into the belief systems about yourself and go, man, why did I always feel like I wasn't worthy of being taken care of? Like, what are those false beliefs? Do I really have to perform in order to be worthy of love? What if I let go of that belief? Like, what would actually happen in my life? And what I've found is that as I've started to recognize that belief and then challenge it over and over and over again and replace it with connection with other people, wrestle with God, healthy habits, that the false things not only get identified, but they start to weaken. And then you get a chance to say, what would produce a better outcome for me than you're only loved if you perform? Well, I've always been lovable. I mean, I took a breath. I'm a breathing miracle right now. Like what outcome is going to come if I actually believe that?
By asking that question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I actually start to believe it, and then what do? I go and I produce outcomes that prove that that belief is right, the same way that I found myself producing outcomes of the old belief,
Right.
right? And so that it took time over and over and over again. And for me, one of the biggest secrets to this whole process is we as human beings, we're used to running from pain. And the people that I find that live the most wholehearted lives, they learn to not like love pain, but they learn to embrace pain as the vehicle for their future growth. It's the it's the best place where we can find learning, where we can have growth. It's through the pain rather than running from it that we actually find, and this sounds weird, we find a life of joy and confidence and peace and connection. It's through the pain. It's on the other side of it.
That okay. Thanks for coming on the show. No, that was a phenomenal answer, Tyler. Thank you so much. Holy cow. Um, if you haven't, go back and listen to that again and again and again and again. And just understand that Tyler, he speaks so much truth in every word. Like, I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube or on Audible, but he was so focused on every single word that came out of his mouth, guys. That was incredibly powerful, truly inspirational and life-changing. So again, go back and listen to that a couple of times. So, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with the questions here, Tyler. That's amazing. How long did it take you from this 15-year journey that you've been on? Because I know some people might hear that and think, I've got to dedicate 15 years to mental health before I'm thriving. Like, how long within that process did you actually start letting go of the I need to perform to be loved and valued, and you actually started clinging on to the I'm lovable as I am, I'm worthy, and I'm enough as I am?
When it all broke loose with my wife, she found out, and then I think within a matter of a couple of days, she decided she did not want to be with me. She needed to plant her feet, get grounded again. She
Mm-hmm.
couldn't trust me. She left me. And as she left me, the day that she left me, we happened to be on the road on the highway. She was going down south. We lived in Idaho. She was going down south to New Mexico to stay with her dad. And I was driving an hour on the highway next to her back and forth to where I worked. And so we were kind of passing each other. And I had two little girls at the time, these little pigtails. Just all I could see was their pigtails. I couldn't even see my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And right as I was exiting off of the off ramp, I happened to look over at my wife and made eye contact with her. And I expected to see hatred and anger and bitterness. And what I saw instead was this look of devastation. Like if you've ever seen Braveheart, when when Robert the Bruce betrays him, and then he's pulls the helmet off him and he realizes that it's Robert the Bruce that betrayed him, and then his reaction is just like it's almost like he got the wind knocked out of him. That was the look on my wife's face.
Mm-hmm.
And as I exited, something inside of me broke on the inside. And I said, I can't afford to hurt the people that I love. I've got to figure this out. I was exhausted though emotionally. I got done with work. I drove home. I was so tired. I collapsed on my living room floor. I couldn't even get to my bedroom. And I just started to sob and cry out and say, help me. I can't get out of my own way. Like, I felt so unworthy. And in that moment, I had another spiritual experience where I felt like God stepped into this place where I'm the most broken I've ever been in my life. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
least worthy I've ever felt in my life. And somehow I'm still having access to this power of love. And something inside of me was planted in the back of my head saying, how is it possible that I could still feel love when all of these beliefs are raging? You're a failure. You're not good enough. You ruin people's lives.
Every
And yet,
negative core belief was just
yeah,
in full force. Yeah.
yeah. And so that was planted there. And then at the same time, within a matter of a couple of weeks, I was actually taught a skill called the practice of self compassion. And I started to pair self-compassion with this feeling that I had remembered having. So the way self-compassion works is that it's three parts. You notice when an emotion or belief is there, and
Mhm.
then you tie it together through mindfulness of your body, your belief, and your emotion. So I just get done with a therapy session. I'm feeling this pit in my stomach, this heaviness in my shoulders. I go, oh, there's the physiology. What's the thought process? Tyler, you're a failure. Tyler, you should have done this, should have done that, could have done this. You're not good enough, whatever that is. What's the emotion? Oh, there's your shame, Tyler. So that's
Mhm.
the first step. You connect your thoughts to your emotions, and then you give it a name. And then you acknowledge, Tyler, you're having a moment of suffering. You're in shame. You're having a moment of suffering. And then it moves to the second part, which is called common humanity. And you tie your current experience to what it means to be human. Because we all think that we're the only ones, when in reality, there's millions, maybe billions of people right now on this earth that are feeling shame too. I'm not alone. Like, this is
Mhm.
human. Like, what I'm experiencing means that I'm a human being.
Oh, absolutely. And
Right.
like that feeling to perform and to not be a burden. It's like I know I personally struggle with those, and a lot of people you and I both know struggle with those.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah, you're not alone. And for those listening, I hope you hear this and you can see those thoughts within you and think, wow, if nothing else, at least there's two other guys who have openly admitted that yeah, they struggle with performance. They struggle with being a burden. They struggle with not they have had those struggles.
Yep.
And I love the self-compassion skill. I mean, we're 30 minutes into an amazing episode already where
Yeah.
the story is enthralling and your tools, so many tools are already coming out. And I love this. So Tyler, thank you. Again,
Yeah.
thank you for your vulnerability, man. This is, I'm like getting all teary eyed over here. I just love this, man. This is going to change lives.
You bet. Do you have a minute I could just finish this skill for the people who are listening?
100%.
Yeah. So you've got your mindfulness. You notice that you're having your belief or your feeling. The second part is common humanity. And then the third part is where you actually apply what's called the self-compassion. So the self-compassion comes through with you treating yourself as if you were talking to your best friend instead of yourself. So now it's like, Tyler, you're a work in progress. Everybody feels this way sometimes. In fact, you're an awesome guy. You're a force for good. When I started to do this exercise, and then had this little memory of this feeling of love that I'd have, I remember doing this maybe 10, 20, sometimes 100 times a day, anytime that feeling of shame would come up. And I remember about maybe 3 weeks into practicing this exercise, I got done with the therapy session. I stood up, and before I could even be conscious of it, I found my brain going, Tyler, you're a good guy. You're a work in progress. It's okay for you to grow. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I've trained myself to be in the habit of actually starting to believe this. And then that belief started to grow. And now it's grown to a place where I'm still a human being. I make mistakes. I'm a work in progress. I'm going to be work in progress till I die. And I love that. But I know now, and I believe this that in a way that I never known before. And it's just through simple repetition of the right things, the right inputs, that the truth is that I am a force for good in this world. I'm
Yeah.
also a work in progress, and I can still improve,
Right.
but I like who I see in the mirror. And when I like what I see in the mirror, I go out and I spread that light into the lives of other people. That's what happens. The right inputs lead to the right outcomes. Most of us focus on the outcomes first instead of the inputs, and it's those inputs a little bit at a time over time that make the biggest difference.
That's so cool. I think you just described humility perfectly. It's that you understand your strengths and you bring them out and share them with the world, but you also understand that you have weaknesses and you're willing to grow, right? You're a work in progress and you share your light with people. So you're awesome. You're awesome. You're humble and you're awesome. And thank you. And I'm sorry for interrupting you before that third skill, but that is truly amazing. And one thing I want to point out too that was really cool is that it took you 3 weeks doing that self-compassion practice from anywhere from 20 to 100 times a day before you started to believe it. For those, so when people hear that, don't think that it's a 15-year process to start the change and to make effective change in your life. It can be as short as 3 weeks, depending on your dedication and how committed you are to practicing these positive mental health, these positive mental health skills and practices. So I love that, Tyler. Thank you so much. So, next question for you. So, coping skills. I want to talk about those a little bit. I know you said that it's evolved over time, right? When you first started and you were lying on the ground, or and you learn about these self-compassion skills. And then now what you're doing is you're meditating and you're working out and you're doing cold plunge therapy, which I'm a huge advocate of, red light therapy, which is the business that I'm in. And I'm actually curious as to where you do red light therapy, if you do it at home or if you have a center that you go to. But that can be a conversation for another day. But that's really cool. I didn't know that either. And you've developed all these things. What are some of the most prominent coping skills that you've used throughout the process?
Man, there's so many. I'll give you. It's kind of cool because as you get into this kind of process and you really do a deep dive, there are endless tools at your disposal, and the more extensive the toolbox with the ability to use the tools, the better
Mhm.
life gets. But I'll give a couple of real basic ones that seem to give a lot of bang for your buck. So
Cool.
for me, with like my depression, I still have waves of depression come through me, and when that hits, something that I've learned over the years of learning to dance with this is that that's exactly what mental health issues are, is they're a dance. And just coming to that acceptance that I might never ever get rid of my clinical depression,
Mhm.
but I've learned how to dance with it, and it's brought a lot of beauty in my life. It's been the birthplace in many ways of my ability to connect with other people and have empathy. And so I wouldn't necessarily want to get rid of it, but when it does hit, there's a skill that I use a lot, and it's simple. It's called riding the wave or surfing the urge. And it's, instead of fighting an emotion, it's learning to see an emotion, be curious with an emotion, experience the emotion, and then let it pass through. That's what emotions are. They're waves. They're not permanent. We think they're permanent, and we actually make them worse because we fight them. Instead, we could actually learn to get on top of them and say, you know what? This is one of my days of depression. So
Mhm.
I'm probably going to have a little bit of a lower day. I'm probably not going to get as much bang for my buck out of the daily things that I do. I'm still going to do those things. I'm going to allow myself to have a rough day. I'm going to be okay. And I know, because I've done it now multiple hundreds of times, this too will pass. And if I can just become an observer of my own experience rather than this person who's fighting the experience, the suffering, even though there's still the depression and the sadness and the hardness and the heaviness, the suffering isn't there. It's what we think about our pain and our mental health issues that causes more suffering than the actual issues themselves.
Mhm.
And when we can trust ourselves, I can get through this. I've done it before. It's going to be okay. In fact, I've learned from it before. Um, how do I experience it? Oh, there's this press behind my eyes and there's some numbness inside of me. There's this heaviness. Like, okay, I can observe that. I can sit with that. I don't have to fight it. It will move. It'll
Mhm.
pass. So that one's been a really powerful skill for me. Just learning to ride the wave or surf the urge. It's a really good skill when you've got an addiction, because you can learn to surf the urges the same way you surf your emotions.
Right.
So, and
Yeah.
then if you want just maybe one other one,
Yeah. That'd be great.
there's a set of skills that I use to kind of increase the quality of my life called the ABC skill, which is A, is you accumulate positives on a daily basis. You look for things to be grateful for, to admire. I call them God winks, like to find ways that God's winking at me and saying, I see you, Tyler. B is to build mastery. So to be engaged in something where I'm improving myself and my life, my confidence on a
Mhm.
regular basis. And then C is to cope ahead, to look at my day and say, what are the places where I might run into some emotional struggle? And I'm going to make a plan for how to deal with that stuff first, rather than being blindsided by it when I get to it for that day. And if I do those three things, then life kind of, it almost increases the emotional energy in the tank to burn when stresses do hit, and then you have a plan for the ones that you could control. And so it kind of like smooths things through, and it allows life to not quite be so bumpy.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And oh, so always so many questions, which I love. So back to the skill, riding that wave. I know for me, like when I have to sit and ride the wave, when I'm actually like cognitively aware that I'm like, oh, this is an emotion. I need to just allow this to feel. At times I'll go into a closet, I'll sit down, it'll be dark, and I'll just sit there and feel it. And it is so incredibly intense. for me, right? And it's just this really powerful feeling in my whole body, and it gets really intense. It's probably there for 5 to 10 minutes, and then it goes away, and I feel better, right? So what, like with riding the wave for you, what has that been like? What does that look like for you personally?
Yeah, it's been anywhere from, I mean, I remember early on in my recovery, I had this like trigger, this urge to want to act out again. And
Yeah,
it lasted a long time. It lasted for several hours. Like I didn't sleep the whole night because I was just like, oh, I so want to give into this urge. And I was trying to practice this new skill, the riding wave skill. So it's not always very quick, but it does move eventually. Same thing with depression. Sometimes it's a few days,
right.
or even a week. Like I had a really rough week a couple weeks ago, and it took a long time. But so the duration can be short or long. I think with
Mhm.
what you were saying there, though, Chase, is being able to allow yourself to go into it. There's a line that I use for myself with this skill, which is any pain that we feel emotionally, the worst that that pain can do is make us feel. We were
I
built to
love that.
feel like, we were built to be feeling beings. That's why we have emotions. The worst that this is going to do is it's going to make me feel. We create stories like this is going to kill me, or I'm going to go do something stupid, or it's like, no, if I actually just observe the feeling, the worst it can ever make me do is feel. And I can feel. Like I can trust myself to feel.
Right.
So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And you are a wealth of knowledge, man. It's like the minute you said that, it's like the worst thing it can do is just make me feel. I was like, oh, that's going to be a clip. Like that's going to be a clip that goes out everywhere. That was such a powerful statement. Just, oh, dude, I love this. I love you. You're such a great guy.
Feelings are mutual, Chase.
Thanks, brother. And then about the ABCs, man. So when you're accumulating those feelings and thoughts of positivity, are those for you like are they mantras? Like you wake up every day and you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, Tyler, like 10 or 15 times, or is it those God winks where you're just like, you walk out and you're feeling kind of hot because the shower was too hot, and then there's like a slight breeze, and you're just like, thank you, Jesus. Like you knew I needed to cool down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like what does that look like for you?
It's all of those things. So we do something called our dailies, which is where we're actually trying to intentionally put some things on the positive side of the ledger. So my cold water and my exercise and all of those things, those are intentional things that I do. But then I
Mhm.
also, like, this is going to sound kind of funny, but last night I had a really rough day with my late night group last night. And I get done at 11 p.m. with that group, and I walked outside middle of the winter time, and it's been kind of like foggy and things here where we live, but for some reason last night it was crystal clear. Crystal
Mhm.
clear. I'm walking my dog for her evening walk at 11 p.m. and I'm so caught up in all the stresses that I've had, and then I just looked up at the sky, and right when I looked up at the sky, there happened to be clear skies, open moon, light glinting off. And there were literally right next to me in my own neighborhood, there were four deer that walked right in front of me. And
Whoa. Okay.
in the moonlight. And I just thought, and I paused and I said, that's a God wink. Like I'm gonna add
100%.
that to my ledger. Like that. Look at the beauty. Look at the place where I live where there's such beauty. Or like I remember one day walking into my office feeling really depressed and heavy when I started my practice. I'm walking across this asphalt parking lot, straight black asphalt, and in the crack there's a little weed that has a little purple flower on it. And I just thought to myself, like, that that weed is incredible. It got planted. It got planted in the worst possible place it could have been planted, and it still found a way to bloom. And then for me, I was like, that's going on my ledger today. Like
It's a
I can
God
bloom
wink.
wherever I'm planted too. If that weed can bloom, I can bloom. And so so it's like that's the accumulation of the positives that just kind of come to you in a day. I be open to those things. Look for those things. They're there.
Yeah, I love that. That's so awesome. Oh man. So this I know we're running short on time. So I want to get to these last two questions and give you an opportunity to kind of talk about what you're doing, because I think what you do on a daily basis is so important in some of the stuff. So the appreciation now for the journey. So you say you're a work in progress, and you've come so far, and you've changed these thoughts and beliefs and these patterns, and you are an advocate for. My mic just turned off. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me again?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure. So like you're an advocate for good, you're fighting for men's hearts, you are for women's hearts, you are a force for good in this world, right? And you do it with God, and it is truly, truly phenomenal. Looking back at these last 15, 20, I'm not going to say how old you are because I think, but ever since you've started noticing this mental health, you've been on this journey, right? You've experienced the highs, the lows, you've been invited for sex by random men on bridges, you've seen loss, you've experienced the beauty of birth and life and careers and all of these things. What can you what can you appreciate about this entire journey that you've been on?
I honestly don't think I would change anything that I've been on because of the the absolute growth that all of it has brought. It's like
Even
there's
though it
a
sucked, even though it's been
yeah,
really hard.
yeah. There's an old like song that a lot of people know. There's a verse in that song that no people don't usually sing, and it says, "When through fiery trials thy pathway shall lie, my grace all sufficient shall be thy supply. The flames will not hurt thee. I only design thy dross to consume and thy gold to refine." And I think part of what I've come to experience and what I've come to firmly believe that I think actually provides a lot of joy and peace in my life is that this life that we have to live comes with its struggles, and that the struggles are part of what makes it beautiful, because the struggles, I mean, I would not be as convicted in what I do. I feel like I'm living my life calling right now,
Mhm.
and I needed to be depressed. I needed to struggle with an addiction. I needed to go through the hell. I needed to almost lose my marriage. I needed all of that in order to shape me and mold me into this place where I feel like I get to wake up every morning and I get to look myself in the mirror and be excited about the life that I'm living now. And it doesn't mean that the
Because of the
yeah,
hard stuff you went
because
through.
of all of that stuff.
Uh,
And the truth is that even in the day-to-day right now, there's still hard stuff.
right.
But that's great. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to grow anymore. And when people learn to adopt that mindset, it just it just shoots their resilience through the roof.
I love that. That's awesome. And final question for you, Tyler. What advice for those people who are just learning about mental health, who are starting their pathway to a better life, a better mental health, who are starting recovery work? What advice do you have for those people just getting into the process?
People people who are just getting into the process often are getting into the process because they're already experiencing some really hard things, some darkness. The world seems heavy, it might seem hopeless, it might seem impossible. And what I would like to leave with people is that if you're struggling with anything like that, there's hope. Like I want you to know that there's hope, and that life can not only, it's not about recovering a life that you used to live, it's about developing a life that is even more rich and more vibrant because of the fertilizer of the challenge. And and I love, one of my favorite things in the whole world is to see somebody in any arena, even if they're probably going to get obliterated, giving everything they have in their heart. And to me, success is more about draining the tank of all of my heart and my energy towards a good cause rather than the outcome itself. Because when you do that, the outcomes take care of themselves.
Amen. 100% agree with you there, Tyler. Oh, well, thank you for answering those questions and sharing your vulnerable story with us and these tools and these skills. This was, I know for me personally, life changing. Like, I know I'm going to walk away from this conversation a much better man with some new skills and tools and a much deeper appreciation for you and what you do. I mean, I'm already a diehard fan of you and your brother-in-law Chase and your brother Brandon. But I mean, even more so, so I really love that. So Tyler, obviously after people listen to this, they're going to want to get in contact with you. They're going to want to they might have questions for you. How can they get in contact with you? What's going on in your life right now where people can not only like, what do they have to grow? What skills and tools do you have for people to grow? How can they contact you if they have more questions? And yeah,
Thanks, Chase. Thanks for the opportunity to come on.
yeah.
Yeah, so you can find us if you want to listen to the podcast, it's at therapybros.com is the best place. Otherwise, lovestrong.com is the best way to reach us and kind of get in contact. We actually have some really cool things that I love doing. We do a men's and a women's retreat every year. And our women's retreat is actually coming up in April 11th through 14th. If anybody's interested in that, it's all about wholehearted living. The things we talked about today, radiantdawn.org would be the way to find that.
Yeah, and link will be in the description for the podcast. So yeah, please, ladies, sign up for that. I know my wife has personally been on it twice, and every time she comes back with new skills and new tools and funny stories and trials, but I mean, it's life changing. It's totally life altering. Um, but yeah, anything else, Tyler, that you want to plug?
Nope. Thank you for allowing me to come on.
That is amazing, Tyler. And again, thank you for being willing to come on. I really appreciate it. And again, for those, if you liked what you heard today, make sure to like and subscribe. Understand that Tyler he is the first and probably one of the best first people we could have on the podcast in a line of very many people. If you have a story of resilience that you want to share, no name is too big, no story is too small, I would absolutely love to have you on. Please contact me at chase@thewellnesscenter.life. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about what I do, go to thewellnesscenter.life. We focus on full body red light therapy, where we recalibrate the body one session at a time. And again, Tyler, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, man. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Chase.
Peace out.